Welcome to this month's episode of The Value Proposition, brought to you by the Fitness Business Podcast. Now over to your host, Sarah Pellegrino.
For our November 2022 show, we'll be speaking with Ken Reinig, CEO of Reinig Risk Management, and Rick Mayo, CEO of Alloy Personal Training Franchise. This is a big first for The Value Proposition. In 27 episodes, we have yet to cover an insurance and liability company, so I am thrilled to deliver such an insightful topic to our Value Proposition listeners today. Welcome to The Value Proposition by the Fitness Business Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Pellegrino. The Value Proposition is a monthly show on the Fitness Business Podcast, created specifically for industry suppliers to showcase the value that they bring to health club owners and operators beyond their product or service. So without further ado, Ken and Rick, welcome to The Value Proposition.
Thank you, Sarah. Good to see you again. Rick, good to see you too, buddy.
Likewise. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, Ken. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. Well, we are going to jump right in. Ken, no one knows the liability issues associated with gym ownership and employee safety training better than you and your team. So tell our listeners about the history of your company and how it all began.
We've been around now almost 30 years, been in this business exclusively for the health and fitness industry. So many years, many different companies throughout that lifespan of bringing not only health club insurance, liability, property, workers' comp to the industry, but more recently bringing true risk management, education protocols, and services that go above and beyond just having a regular insurance policy. Once we incorporated that into our business model several years ago, it has really proven to be the best proposition that we can offer the industry. People can get insurance from anywhere. And unless you differentiate yourself in this marketplace by offering something that other insurance brokers cannot offer or don't know how to offer, you're just going to become a commodity, just like everything else in our industry. So in order to get beyond the commodity view of what we do, we really dove into the risk management side, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today, and especially for our launch for the risk management protocol program for 2023.
Absolutely. That's so cool, Ken. And you are known in the industry as the insurance guy. So thank you so much for that intro. And Ken, go ahead and give our listeners an idea about specifically what types of services and support that you offer health club operators currently.
Well, in addition to insurance, as I pointed out, the property liability, workers' comp, employment practices liability, and cyber liability now as well. But one of the services that we offer, and I don't believe anybody else does right now, is we review your leases. So like when one of Rick's Alloys contacts us, the first thing we ask them is, please send us a copy of your lease, because we can be real instrumental in the early stages of the lease agreements with these franchisees and point out some things in the lease that may adversely affect them from maybe a liability standpoint, but certainly from a fiscal standpoint. If a landlord is overzealous and is requiring extreme amounts of liability issues, we're here to educate that landlord and say, hey, this is the fitness industry. This is the standard for the liability associated with our industry. And it's amazing how much money we save the client before they even become a client. So that is one service that we offer that nobody else does. We do lease review and then make recommendations accordingly.
That's an incredible service, Ken. That's awesome. And Ken, give our listeners an idea of what is the current insurance climate like in fitness right now?
Yeah, it sucks.
Moving on.
Since this isn't going to be on CNBC, I might as well be honest. So it's, but I truly believe in being transparent and open about what the industry is going through right now. Insurance is not a place you want to be in if that's where your stock portfolio is. The insurance industry has been getting hammered, not only from natural disaster type claims where they're paying out a lot more than they used to, but the liability environment in the past couple of years has been a little suspect in that people who got injured before would never think about suing, now are thinking about suing. It's hard to put your finger on it, but I think in general, as the economy goes, or as the perception of what's going on in just general day-to-day living goes, if people are struggling, they're going to be looking to receive monies, handouts. The government's there. We've all taken advantage of things like the PPP loans and everything else. But unfortunately, it kind of trickles down to, well, what happens when those handouts go away, or I don't have that money coming in anymore? And then they remember they broke their finger in the gym 3 weeks ago. And now instead of letting it go, we're just seeing an increase in liability claims. It's uncanny. It's crazy. I'm just saying, it's just what we notice, that when things are tough and there's turmoil out there, it's a trickle-down effect into the liability sector.
Well, we're going to unpack that and so much more in this episode. So we're going to continue right on. Rick, I can say with confidence that you are one of the most innovative performance and training operators and franchisors in the industry. So please go ahead, for background purposes for this episode, let's give our listeners an idea of your history in the industry and your business model.
Yeah, well, look, first of all, you're giving me way too much credit, but I'll take it. So thank you. But, we've been in the industry as long as Ken has, which is hard to believe because I thought Ken was the oldest person in our industry. But as it turns out, I'm right there with him. So we've also been in business for 30 years. And the last, say, 15 years of that, we were running what we call a license, which is basically, white labeling what we do for other clubs all over the world. And we did that to the tune of 2,500 clubs and, put me on the board for some really big, well-known, franchised brands. And then in 2019, we're like, look, instead of powering everyone else's franchise, let's make a run at our own. And we, built full-on franchising. So now our name's on the front door. And it's going well. I mean, obviously, we launched at the end of 2019, and I'm not sure if you guys recall, but there was some weird thing that kicked off early 2020. Sort of derailed the fitness industry for a minute. So once the veil from that mess lifted, we got back on it. We've really been at it hard for about 18 months, and it's going well. We've got, we'll be at 100 sold by year's end and opening them as quickly as possible. And thank God for guys like Ken, because there's so many moving parts to this monster that's a franchise, that like saddling up to really good vendors that are experts in their particular vertical is key. So he is certainly that guy for us. But yeah, that's what we've been at. I mean, we've been in the industry for a million years and done a little bit of everything. Ken and I have known each other for a long time, and he's always been a good friend, but also just, beyond that, that's one thing, but that doesn't mean I'm going to do business with him. But he's really solid at what he does in the insurance space. And he's our only vendor that we would work with in the franchise space. And a lot of people, that are listening to this, if you have an overreaching fitness business, like we work with Ken on the franchisor side as well. So he not only insures our locations, but he insures our franchise business, which is a whole different animal. So when I look at that, it's because he's got a vast amount of knowledge on all things in the fitness space. So I can go to him with a question about, hey, what do I need? What kind of insurance do I need to carry as a franchisor? And he's like, oh, got you. And he already knows, right? Because he's worked with lots of big franchise structures before. So it's just really invaluable to have someone, again, that just, you trust them, that they're experts in that space. They give you advice. He mentioned before, he's transparent. Those kind of conversations about like things suck right now, he'll tell you straight up, like, listen, shit's expensive this year because the industry's changed. I'm like, okay, that's his style. And I so appreciate that, because as you know, trust is in short supply these days. And if you can build that, you've really got a strong currency, right, in your market. And Ken has that in spades. And so for us, we trust him implicitly. I don't know if that's smart or not, the guitar insurance guy, but shame on us. We trust Ken implicitly with all of our insurance needs as a franchisor, and he's the guy for all of our locations. So yeah, we've been at it a while, and are proud to know Ken and work with him.
Well, that just speaks volumes to you, Mr. Ken. Oh my goodness, 100 locations plus, and solely going to you. I mean, that's huge. So thank you, Rick, so much. That's great.
Of course.
Awesome. So you two, you've mentioned that you've been in business together for years. How many years are we talking?
30.
15 maybe, Ken? 30? Yeah, at least 15, just Ken and I, maybe more. I'd have to retrace it. It seems like it's been even longer, but I would say, conservatively, we've been working together for 15 years.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Rick, to an owner or operator listening to this today, can you give us an idea? You mentioned some already, but just a few more traits of a quality insurance representative that an owner or operator needs to be looking for when they're making this decision?
I can speak to it through my lens as an entrepreneur and again, an owner of I don't care if you're owning a big, just one brick and mortar gym or whether you're a franchisor like I am, there's just lots of moving parts to any business. And I will say, like, the least compelling part of my business is risk management. Like I am, most founders are this way. I'm very, committed to product evolvement, to the thing we do, making that amazing, marketing, sales, like those are the things. That's the fun, sexy stuff, right? Mitigating risk is the lowest down on the totem pole for the things that I want to be talking about. And I think most people that own a business would agree with that. But the fact is, you have to have it. Like, it's an absolute necessary evil. And if I'm going to have it, I want someone who's a true expert in the space, not just in the space overall, but really understands the vertical and the industry that I'm in, right? They really understand the fitness industry and they've been in it for a long time. So they can speak to the things that Ken mentioned earlier about, like, things are weird right now. Like, you might want to over-insure in this area based on what we're seeing in these trends in the industry. If you're working with a company that just insures all types of different businesses, you're not going to get that. So for me, I'm looking for, I don't enjoy it. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about it, but I need to trust the person who I'm getting the advice from, because it could be catastrophic if it's not the right advice, right? First of all, and I need to trust that they're setting up the type of insurance that's going to protect me in the case of, again, some kind of a lawsuit or gosh knows what, right? Natural disaster, whatever that may be. And there's a million and one of those things. And I think if you're going to choose that vendor, they need to have deep knowledge in your particular vertical, and you need to trust that the insurance advice that you're getting, right, is going to protect you in case something happens. I mean, that's it at the end of the day. And then that's all I want to know about it. Honestly, I don't want to know anything else, because it's not very fun and it's just a necessary evil, but it's necessary. I'll just leave it at that. You have to have it.
Absolutely. So in addition to all the insurance solutions that Ken has mentioned, that Rick has spoken to already, Ken, you and your team are launching a new risk management platform that we are so excited to talk about on the value proposition today. So go ahead, let us into what you have been working on for quite some time, my friend.
Yeah, actually a little too long. It's like every other project that you start in this industry, or really any in the industry, you get a vision, you can see it in front of you, it's clear as day, and then you start hiring people to help you bring it together. And then that's when there's cost overruns, there's disagreement, there's, I didn't think of that. And then little things like, well, we'll get into the testing part, but what really got me motivated is the fact that we are the leader in risk management services for the industry, and we provide guys like Rick right up front with the latest, greatest waiver that's going to hold up, the best club policies and guidelines, etiquette for the staff, etiquette for the member, how to get rid of a problem member, how to get rid of a staff member. We have had these educational platforms available for years, but the problem is that we hand deliver it to my favorite client like Rick, and he looks at it one day and, like he just pointed out, it's the furthest thing down on his totem pole, period. His insurance is in place. He feels good about it. I got all this great risk management material. And Rick, and I'm not faulting you, but that email does not get opened up, and all those things aren't distributed, and you don't have weekly meetings about this stuff. So I said, how the hell can I get this risk management through the system, through the club owners, through the best marketing people, best operators in the industry, who, again, put risk management at the bottom of their totem pole, but they know it's important. So I came up with the idea, we have to create an education platform where there's accountability. So what we're going to do is we're going to send Rick and his team the risk management platform. He gets to choose which modules that are important for him. He's not going to want the swimming pool maintenance module. He's not going to want the childcare if he doesn't have childcare, but he's definitely going to want how to deal with minors in the gym, how to fill out an incident report, how to deal with sexual harassment. So these modules, he gets to pick and choose, click on them, and that's what he then automatically gets sent to every one of his staff. He gives them a 2-week period of time. They have to go through the training. And this is the important part. They have to take a test. And what we're working with is to make sure that that test is not only easy to do, that it can be done on their iPhone, because our employees don't carry laptops with us. So it's got to be on an iPhone, number one. And it's got to be concise, easy to understand, and some that they can complete in less than 15 minutes per module. So they can go through all the training in less than 2 hours, and you give them a couple of weeks to do it. Rick doesn't have to follow up. Rick doesn't have to do a damn thing. We'll give him a report after a week, let him know which employees have already taken the test and which have not. And at the end of 2 weeks, we've sent him another report. Not only does he now know that all his employees are trained, but he can also separate the ones that probably shouldn't be walking and chewing gum at the same time. So if he had any, and we give the employees 3 opportunities to pass each module, and it's very simple test, 10 questions. It just shows that they read the material basically. And but it's so important. So Rick doesn't have to do a thing.
How does that sound, Rick?
That sounds amazing, except for the bubble gum and walking point. I'm afraid to take that test. But other than that, sounds absolutely amazing. But, all kidding aside, case in point, like Ken gets it, right? He understands he's been in the industry. He understands the makeup of the people running these businesses. It is low on the totem pole because it's not interesting. It's not fun. It's not sexy. Absolutely necessary. So he's taking, proactive action and saying, look, how can I build something that's quick, easy, that the employees can take, that doesn't jam up the owner with a bunch of administrative or accountability tools? So, of course, I'm a fan. I love it. And I think, I'm not sure what the end result of that is, other than, hey, like everybody on my team has passed these compliance issues. Check, right? Could be part of an onboarding process and could be built into the SOPs of the business very easily, right? And so the less friction that there is and the less stuff that I have to do, I'm a fan. So it sounds amazing.
Yeah, I agree completely. And Ken, I have a few follow-up questions that I know our listeners will be asking too. So to Rick's point, is this something that you are having new staff members do? And or is this an annual compliance testing, or could it be both?
It's really both. We will set this up as a requirement or a recommendation, high recommendation to do every single year, just because, the club owner gets busy, he has turnover, he's worried more about getting butts in the seats than the back end stuff. So we're just going to be that little constant reminder every year. Hey, Rick, time for your crew to get updated. And we'll update the questions as well. But even if there's a lot of repeat questions, it's very similar to like having your ACE certification as a trainer. You got to get it every single year. You got to have a little bit of training to keep your certification up. So that it is going to be an annual thing that we're going to have you guys do. And again, if it's seamless, it's simple. It's all it takes is for Rick to send an email. Hey, time for our updating on safety certification. Get this to me within 2 weeks. And then he's out of it. That's it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And Ken, is this something that, so each owner or operator can go through and say, these are the courses I want my team to take? Are there levels where, for example, the general manager is taking different courses than maybe someone in childcare would be taking?
That's a very good question. Right now, it's set up just for employee use.
Perfect.
We're going to have a hybrid program out just for owners and managers, because we're going to get into the details of how to fire somebody. And so
That's the fun stuff, right?
employees are not going to they don't need to be part of any of those modules.
No,
But
they don't.
like in even space setup, what's
Yep.
the ADA requirements from treadmills? I mean, that's a whole topic into itself, is how you design your space. You don't put the childcare in the back of the gym, the simple things like that. So to answer your question, that at this time, this is just for employees.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, that is so exciting. I know that this is definitely a pain point, and really, Ken, there's nothing that quite meets that need, right? You've completely you filled a need within the industry, and staff retention and onboarding is always such a hot topic. Is it not, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, big time. Like, I think the thing that I was thinking of is Ken was describing it. I'm like, to me, the word that I think of is bandwidth, right? Because this is like a de facto HR function, if you will, right? And if he's going to provide that for us, and if he's going to provide resources on best practices for letting someone go from the team for lack of performance, what type of documentation do we need on the front end? What type of documentation do we need when they leave? Do they need to sign anything? Otherwise, you'd have to go and research all of that on your own. And so if you've got modules that teach it to you, and by the way, we don't have to reach out to Ken's team very often, but I will say that when we have, we always get a very quick and meaningful response. And it's a very succinct answer to our question. It's not some lofty answer about like, well, you could, but maybe, it's just like, no. Based on what you're going through in your state, here's what we've seen for best practices. This is the way you need to handle it. That's what I look for as an owner who's trying to scale a big company. I need bandwidth, right? And I need vendors that can hold down their area of expertise. And that's what I hear that this is going to give us even more of. So to me, sounds amazing. Sounds really compelling, because that's what I need.
Yeah. And Ken, is this something that, so Rick and his team, they're using your insurance services. Is this something that they can add on to, I'm assuming, just what they're doing currently, but if someone is not using you for insurance, can they purchase your risk management platform separately?
Another good question. For existing clients, this is going to be, at least for the time being, we're rolling it out with no cost at all, because we know we're going to get some feedback as well, and just to help us develop the platform even more. Awesome. Whether we charge for it down the road, I'm not even that concerned about it. This definitely helps our existing clientele. So as of right now, is no charge at all. Outside of us, for like training studios, small group, you're looking at $100 a year per club. For regular size gyms, 20,000 square feet and above is $500 a year. That's just the numbers we're popping up right now. It's going to be very affordable. So there are people out there that are listening to this podcast. I'll never be their insurance guy. Their brother-in-law is their insurance agent. So I'll never get that business. But the one thing that those agents can't provide is this risk management platform. And I'd be happy to sell it to those who will never get it.
I love it. Ken, one more question here on the new platform. What would you say to someone that says, okay, Ken, how is the risk management platform going to help save me money on my insurance premiums?
Great question. I love answering this. It's not. It's not. It is not today. So you're not going to get a discount for buying the risk management platform. The insurance industry is a very reactionary animal. So you're going to have to institute these risk management protocols and education benefits to your staff long before we see the real benefit down the road. So yet it will definitely save you money 3-5 years from now, because one, you're going to have fewer claims. And that's the biggest part. And the claims you do have, we're going to be able to now go to the juries, 6 people who are too stupid to get off jury duty, and explain to them that this is the kind of training that our staff undergoes. And they show the platform, they show that as evidence. It's going to speak volumes as to the commitment to risk management that facility has. And accidents happen at the gym. So you have the same accident that happens at a gym with no training, zero training. And then you have the same accident, one that's gone through Reinig Risk Management Solutions training. And we can show that they actually took tests. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that that valuation of that claim is going to go down significantly. So yes, you will save money. It will not be something you'll be able to quantify or see in the next few months. But over time, reduction of claims, better premiums, and then you're going to have fewer verdicts that kill you.
Great point. This is a long run play. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, such a great conversation around staff training in our industry right now and the Reinig Risk Management platform. So Ken, thank you for bringing this to the industry. Rick, thank you for the feedback that you will provide us once your locations go live with this. That's awesome. I wanted just to switch gears just a bit to cap off this conversation today. But Rick, in your opinion, what is one of the greatest liabilities to health club owners and operators in the market today?
The biggest liability would be more than likely just being undercovered, if that's such a word, right? Like you just don't have the right coverage. You didn't talk to the right person. You purchased the wrong type of insurance, or, listen, when I first met Ken, he was telling me a very interesting story that I'll never forget. Do you mind if I share it? It won't take long, I promise. So Ken was telling me a story, and we were talking about, liability insurance. And I'm like, hey, give me some scenarios where this is something I might need. And he's like, listen, I can tell you a very specific story. He's like, I was working with a gym, and it wasn't a small gym. It was a larger gym. And there was a member who was running around the track. And there was a couple of guys that were installing some glass, and they ended up kind of in the same area. And so as the person running around the track was going through the area where the guys were carrying the glass, they dropped the glass. It slid across a piece of equipment and essentially severed both of the legs of the individual who was running around the track. Just a horrific accident. And of course, I'm same face that you're making right now, Sarah. If you guys are just listening, it's mouth agape, right? So I was like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. So he's like, yeah, it was horrible scene, blah, blah, blah. And of course, my next, I just went straight to gosh, that's horrible for the individual. And once I got over that, I'm like, I'm sure there was some terrible liability there. Was there a lawsuit? And Ken said, no. And I'm like, no. And he said, no, the guy didn't have a leg to stand on. And honest to everyone listening to this, I apologize for that joke. That is the exact joke that Ken Reinig told me probably 16 years ago. And I'm standing there asking him serious insurance questions, and he deadpan tells me this story, looking me dead in the eye. In the weird, most twisted way, I looked right back at him and I was like, you're my guy. I will never do insurance business with anyone else. But I will never forget that story because I bought it hook, line, and sinker. I was like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. What happened? There must have been a terrible lawsuit. He just deadpan says, no, the guy didn't have a leg to stand on. And there's a long pause as I try to figure out, did he really just tell me this entire story while I'm trying to ask him about insurance questions? And then I just fell out laughing, and I will never forget that story or that moment in my entire life. But I'll tell you what, the biggest risk is that you have someone who's underinformed. Maybe you go buy insurance from your brother-in-law and he insures something completely different. He doesn't understand the space. There are very specific liabilities that go along with the fitness space. Ken mentioned a few of them. And different types of businesses in the fitness space need different types of insurance, right? And so without that critical knowledge, I would say that would be your biggest risk, is not having someone who knows the space well, who's going to make sure that you're covered in the way that you need to be, which is very specific to this industry. So, there's a lot of you could run down a lot of rabbit holes here, but I think overwhelmingly, that's the most important thing.
That is so perfect, Rick. And you're right, 100%. Ken, what other gotchas are out there in the industry right now? What else are you seeing just causing owners and operators pain in the insurance space?
Well, it kind of piggybacks on the question that you gave to Rick about what we see as a large potential liability. It really comes down to staff training. It comes down to that person who filled out that incident report. It's amazing how juries can flip so easily just because you had an uneducated staff member who filled out an incident report incorrectly. Small verbiage, small learning, and that's the biggest platform that we have with the new risk management program that we're coming out with. So uneducated staff, and then if they're not educated in the use of the AED that's sitting on the wall, the Good Samaritan Act is only going to go so far. You don't train people and they have the wherewithal to revive somebody right on premises and it sits on the wall. That's not going to bode very well with the juries. So staff education is by far the biggest liability we see in our industry. Turnover is a real problem with this industry.
Yeah.
And as such, if you don't have these protocols in place that Rick hires somebody new, he can just automatically have that manager send them this risk management system that they have to go through before they get hired, period. It's a 2-hour deal. So starting at the very bottom level in the education of the employee, that's where we see the biggest struggles with liability claims.
It's such a huge point. And I think this is just a reminder to everyone that there is a lot of staff turnover right now, but do not get lazy when it comes to staff training, right? Because you might be on your 4th front desk person, but they may be the one that needs to know how to use that machine, to your point, Ken, right?
Right.
So
Yep.
That's awesome. Really, really great things to keep your eye on, especially going into a new year. Thank you both so much. Ken, one of your articles on your website, they're so good. They're all on different topics, but one of them mentions how the holidays just create an extra layer of risk for health club owners and operators. So there are a few things that owners should be mindful of going into the winter.
Don't drink your hot toddy when you're doing a hack squat.
I would concur. Yes. As an exercise expert, I'm going to have to say that's pretty accurate. Yeah.
Not good for your form.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. No, not really. I think I touched on it anyway. It's just when people are feeling a little bit down, things are just not rolling like they used to. It just feels off. And the holidays bring that out in every single one of us. The real push we see, it's not right after January 1st. We always expect to see a ton of claims come in right after January 1 because the gyms are packed with the New Year's resolution people. But it isn't until like February 1st that we start seeing them roll in. People start signing up in January. They're really on board in February, but they're really going at it right about that time. And people that join gyms and then they're just completely forgotten. The biggest risk management tool in the world is knowing your member's name. Number one, if everybody who walks in the gym, your front person knows that person's name. Hey, Jim, how you doing? It's good to see you. Where were you last week? If you get to that point where you're operating that kind of a gym, I don't care how big you are. You have 10,000 members or 400 members. If you do not do that, you're missing out on the greatest risk management tool known to mankind. Friends don't sue friends. So if you treat your members like friends, you won't get sued. We should have just said that at the beginning and saved ourselves 45 minutes.
Ken, I was going to say that's going on your social media tile for this episode. That's perfect. That is just such a brilliant piece of advice to end with today. Thank you so much. Rick, final words. What would you tell an owner or operator that is considering calling Ken but has not picked up the phone quite yet?
I think I would tell them what are they waiting for? Why have they not done it yet? It's not too late, but you better get on it. That's what I would tell them. That's
right. That's awesome. Ken, what is the best place to send someone that wants to hear more about you, your team, and this amazing new risk management platform?
Yeah, just drop me an email to ken@theinsuranceguy.com. Say, hey, I heard you on the podcast. Sarah was phenomenal. Rick needs a shave.
Both accurate, once again.
But just drop me a quick note, say, please let us know when you're ready to launch your new risk management product. We'd love to hear more about it. And then I'll put you on the list. And if we can quote your insurance, great. But we're here for this industry. We love this industry. And thank you, Sarah, for bringing us together today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for the insights that you shared on today's show. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in to the value proposition for managing risk in your fitness business. Tune in Friday, December 23rd for our next value proposition episode. And to show we walk the talk at the Fitness Business Podcast, all the resources and links for today's show can be found at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com, adding value to our FBP family. Until next month, what you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others. See you next month, FBP family.